The Cincinnati Reds bullpen is set, and that only means good things for the Reds' ambitions of 2024. We'll tell you why on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Aloha, you are live and Locked On Reds, your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr, and we love baseball. We love these Cincinnati Reds. We have taken our love of the game, our love for the Reds, and we have turned that into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are live here once again for an Aloha Friday on YouTube. Audio folks, you should join us live over here sometime. Subscribe to that YouTube channel, hit that notification bell so you can participate in these lives and get your questions and comments addressed directly from Jeff and I live right here on screen. On today's podcast, we are going to break down the Reds signing of Brent Suter. That's right. The second lefty that I have been clamoring for has been signed. Thanks, Nick. We have decided you are for sure listening to this show. So Thank you. Appreciate you going out there and getting that lefty. We are also going to take a look at who the Reds avoided arbitration with and who they didn't. And we'll tell you what we take away from that and what we think it means. And for sure, we know you are going to have tons of comments and questions because there was a lot of Reds news yesterday. Thank God, because I tell you what, January is the toughest time, Jeff, to fill some of these shows if the Reds aren't doing anything. So once again, Nick, thanks for listening and thanks for doing things. I'm going to need a move a week. I need something a week to get the shows done. But Jeff, before we get into any of the things we want to discuss today, I want to shout out the sponsor of today's podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Love the Game Time app. Jeff and I both use that app all season long. All right, Jeff, let's start with the Brent Suter signing because, first of all, his name is Brent Suter. There has been some confusion, mostly by me and Mark Sheldon. But other than that, it's Brent Suter. Spent a lot of time in Milwaukee, Colorado last year. I love this signing, Jeff.
It's a huge signing, and I know that you've been clamoring for a second lefty in the bullpen, and I absolutely love the way that they went about this because there's a lot of things that he is superior to the other lefties in the bullpen. We know that we loved what Sam Maul did in a small sample size, but if you kind of stretch it out and what all Sam Maul's done in his career compared to what Brent Suter's done in his career, Brent Suter's been better at it. He's not the big strikeout guy that you expect a lot of relievers to be, but there's two things that he does at an elite level. I'm not even really afraid to say that. He limits walks and he limits hard contact. In fact, last year, no relief pitcher, no pitcher had a lower average exit velocity than did Brent Suter. He was phenomenal at weak contact, and he had a 46% ground ball rate. I mean, he falls right in line with Nick Martinez, right in line with the signings that the Reds have done. Again, another point to our take that they're listening here. We've been saying we need more ground ball pitchers. Brent Suter fits right in with that. Plus, there's another added thing. We always think of a left-handed relief pitcher as, okay, well, he's going to face the opposing lineup against their left-handed hitters, and he's going to be good against them. Brent Suter's good against everybody. In fact, if you look at his splits from last season, he's actually better against right-handed hitters than he was against left-handed hitters. Now, that's not to say that left-handers hit him well. That's just to say that right-handers hit him worse. And that is a great thing to have, especially for a guy who, I mean, he is going to be a key member of this bullpen, and I'm so glad we got a club option as well for $3.5 million for the next year because he might be here 2 years.
Let's talk about those splits for just a second because they do matter. Versus lefties, his splits on the season last year in 51 games, 108 plate appearances, left-handed hitters hit 284, 370, 421 against him. Okay. But the righties, 229, 290, 295. Factor in the ground ball percentage that you just talked about. I think he's a tremendous upgrade over what the second lefty option would have been. It wasn't so much for me about, can we rely on Sam Maul to be the guy? I think Sam Maul's a good left-handed relief pitcher.
I agree.
But But him being by himself, overuse, he wouldn't be good all season long. His arm would
Having
fall.
Alex Young.
They needed, exactly. They needed two. So now the comparison is Suter versus Alex Young or reverse San Martin, because those are your left-handed options heading into the 2024 season. And I think Suter is better to start the season and better equipped to be better for the season than Alex Young is. Now, that's not a knock on Alex Young. I think he's going to be now a great insurance policy. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But I like this signing, Jeff, because I believe in Sam Moll, but I believe he needed help. And I think this is the perfect signing to give him the help where the two of them, throwing health out. Let's not try and speculate on health. Let's just say they're healthy for all 162.
Right.
I think they make a great 1-2 left-handed punch now for this bullpen. I think this bullpen has now been dramatically improved from last season to this season.
It is so amazing, the difference. I mean, we talked about, Alex Young was the only lefty in the bullpen. You think of some of the guys that we saw a lot of last year out of the pen that we're just like, we got to figure this out, man. And really for the last, as long as I can remember, we've been begging them to add bullpen arms to fix the bullpen problems because they had holes and they really needed to figure it out. And this year they've done that and more. It almost feels like Nick Krall has signed all of the relief pitchers that he's needed to sign for like the last 3 years, but instead he did it all this year. I think it's telling in two ways, and we'll talk about why really the bullpen is set, especially if you factor in health. It's set as we go into spring training, but
and before we move into the rest of the bullpen, there's one more number set that I wanted to get to on Suter because he pitched at Coors Field and he played for the Rockies last year.
Yep.
So when you're looking at his overall stats, let's toss that out for a minute. Let's talk about his road versus home splits in 2023. Pretty equal. He had 3 more games on the road. He pitched in 27 games at home, 30 games on the road. His road split, Jeff, 194. This is slash line batters against. 194, 272, 306 is how he performed away from Coors Field last year. Tremendous pitcher out of Coors Field last year.
Well, and looking at Coors Field specifically, his home splits, how many home runs did he give up at home?
0, none. Well, and
at
that's a
Coors
ginormous play.
Field.
At Coors Field, 0 home runs.
0 homers. I mean, he gave up some doubles and stuff like that, but whatever, man. 0 homers at Coors Field. He's equipped to pitch at Great American Ballpark. And I think it's just going to show the investment that Nick Krall has made in this bullpen. What is a telltale sign? Like every single year, you can talk to a general manager, you can talk to a manager, and they're like, we got a playoff roster, man. We're going for it. This year, they showed us they believe it because a team will show how much they believe in their roster by how much they invest in their bullpen. And the Reds have invested so much in improving their pen this year that this is why I'm so excited. I think that, all of the young guys and taking a step forward, that's exciting. Getting some guys back from injuries that we didn't see a lot last year, that's exciting. The fact that the Reds have put so much capital into this bullpen just tells me that they believe that they are a playoff team, at least a wild card, if not a division contender. And I love that.
Yeah, I love the difference in the model of the offseason right now. How many years did they not even have a budget set by this point? How many years did they go into spring training with all these holes that they were looking to fill through waiver wire acquisitions or last minute spring cut acquisitions? This roster, as we're going to talk about over the coming days, Jeff, I think this roster's set now. This Suter signing, I think, finishes the bullpen. I think the bullpen is done. We did an episode on this last week. I don't know. The days are all running away from me. I think was last week where we kind of set up the bullpen and talked about how we thought it looked. Well, this signing definitely completes the bullpen. So let's work our way through this for just a second, Jeff. Shoe-ins, your guy, Alexis Diaz, closer extraordinaire. He's in this bullpen.
Right.
Lucas Sims, who they just seemed to love after he'd come back from his injury last year, shoe-in. Sam Moll, we talked about him, shoe-in. Buck Farmer, they just re-signed to bring him back for a couple $1 million. They're not cutting him. He's a shoe-in. Also, they went out and got Emilio Pagan. They went out and got Nick Martinez. Both of those guys are shoe-ins. They just signed Brent Suter, shoe-in. Guess what, Jeff? If you weren't counting along with me, that's 7. That's 7 guys. That leaves one spot One spot, you say, Steve. Yes, one spot for either Ian Jabot, TJ Antone, Alex Young, or Fernando Cruz to fill in. Now, let's look at that group. Let's focus in for a second, Jeff. Of those names I just mentioned, Ian Jabot, TJ Antone, Alex Young, Fernando Cruz, Ian Jabot is the only player in that group without options. They'll have to, someone will take him if they expose him. Someone will pick up Ian Jabot. So my prediction is that last spot goes to Ian Jabot, and they stash TJ Antone, Alex Young, and Fernando Cruz all at AAA Louisville as the next men up.
Nick Krall playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. And yes, I know I've seen this on Twitter, and our buddy Branch Brown, who's in the comment section, says that that's overused. So maybe he's playing Connect Four while everybody else is playing Chutes and Ladders. I don't know. Whatever it is, he is smarter than we give him credit for. He is making these moves because you look at this roster and how improved it is, and you say, oh, somebody's got to be an odd man out. Not really. I mean, all of the guys that we are excited about, we're excited to see if TJ Antone can come back healthy, and we're going to talk about him in just a few minutes. We're excited about Fernando Cruz and what he could do. I'm particularly me. I would love to see him in the pen at some time this year. We love what Alex Young had for us last season. Would love to see him improve a little bit. All of those guys are back. All of those guys have the capability of being sent down without being exposed to waivers. And I think that in and of itself just it shows how good this roster is. It is so deep, and instead of years past where it's like everybody's got to figure this out, everybody's got to take a step forward, or nothing's going to work. We've got some guys, like if you go in a slump, there's an infielder to take a spot. If an outfielder goes in a slump, that might be a little bit more dicey, but there's still some way that they can move the roster around to fix it. Pitching, starting pitching, plenty of options. Relief pitching, plenty of options. That is such a refreshing way to look at this roster as we head into spring training, where in years past, it's absolutely not been that way. And I think that is why the Reds moved the way that they did with arbitration, because we're going to talk about some of the decisions that were made there coming up next. Before we talk about that, though, I want to tell you about one of today's sponsors, and that is Game Time. Steve and I absolutely love using the Game Time app. We use it all season long. The best way to do this is literally to go down to the park, find your parking spot, and as you're walking up to the stadium, open up the Game Time app and check out the deals. They are the best app for last-minute tickets, and they're going to help you find the right seat as well. You can see exactly where your view is going to be, what it's going to look like. If you just want to, sometimes Steve and I will just find the cheapest ticket available and go post up at the Bowtie Bar. That happens. Or sometimes you want to get a real nice view. Game Time can help you out with all of that. Check out Game Time today, download the app, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your next order. And look, I know we're still like 76 days away from opening day, so it's not as if you're going to buy baseball tickets anytime soon. You can buy hockey tickets to the Cyclones. You can buy basketball, whether it be UC or Xavier. Not going to judge, although go Bearcats. And then you can find out, maybe if you want to travel to a playoff game for the NFL, maybe you want to go to Indy for a NBA basketball game, Game Time has you covered. Download the app, type in the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and get $20 off your next order, because Game Time has the lowest tickets and the last-minute deals guaranteed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. Every Dayer is coming up next week. There's still so much to get to. We're really going to dive into the spring training invites because there were a couple of players that really intrigued us, but that's going to be coming up on our next episode because there's still so much to focus on with all of the news that came out yesterday. And before we jump into that, remember, you can check out the first ever the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, 24/7. Go subscribe right now. In fact, it's going to be rolling after we are done with this live show, so you can check out what's going on there. It's all the biggest stories with the local flair, the local touch. I mean, there's going to be so much about Belichick and Saban and all of that great stuff going on there in the coaching circles. And I think somebody might be talking about Pete Carroll. I don't know who. I mean, he's gotten just forgotten because of Belichick and Saban. But yeah, that's going to be on Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you subscribe. All right. So
before you jump into the next thing, I just got to tell you that I'm like Pavlov's dog over here. You're going to get a laugh out of this. Every time there's a Game Time sponsorship on this show and we do the read, I crave tacos. And Jeff, you're going to understand why. Because
yes,
like 90% of the time when I'm using that app, I'm at the taco joint across the street from Great American Ballpark, right? So that's Jeff's and I spot pre and post game usually. So I'm craving tacos right now. Thanks a lot.
honestly, it's a great. I mean, the banks are great for that. You can go there and post up pregame, and then find a deal on the Game Time app and go in. So that's definitely an endorsement from us. But let's get to the news, because on top of Brent Suter being signed, which surprised the heck out of me, and by the way, we forgot this point too, and this is a minor point, but this is still worth mentioning. The Cubs, 24 hours before this report, before this signing, the Cubs were all but like printing his jersey. I was talking to our Locked On Cubs guys about this, and they were stunned. They were absolutely shocked that he is now a Cincinnati Red, because they thought he was going to be a Chicago Cub. So an extra point, that's like, making a turnover into some points here, an extra point for Nick Krall on this signing, just bringing back the local guy. By the way, we didn't even mention he's from Muller, so there we go. Local guy as well. Just such a great signing, I think, for so many reasons and all the talent that he brings, but even the added benefit of got one away from the Cubs, who, I mean, finally signed somebody the other day, but come on, like, what are they doing? The Reds are done with their shopping, basically, and the Cubs are just getting to the store.
It's funny watching what's going on in Chicago right now. Actually, the Locked On guys have to be just so frustrated over there with what the Cubs have not done. I think, I think you can read a lot into Suter signing with the Reds instead. I think, I see, and listen, folks, I see the numbers out there and everybody predicting the Cardinals to win this division, and a lot of disrespect directed towards the Reds and all the question marks of their youth, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Listen, I think right now, as constructed, the teams in this division, the Reds have to be the favorite. And I know I'm probably a little biased, but I don't think I'm very much biased. I think this team is built to win right now. And the Reds took some steps to go ahead and solidify and not have a bunch of, for lack of a better way to put this, a bunch of pissed off players that had to go through the arbitration process. If you've never heard Sean Casey tell his arbitration story with Jim Bowden, that's a listen. Go find it. I think it's on the Jim Day podcast. Go check it out. You will laugh your butt off. But the Reds and Nick Krall avoided that mess. They locked down TJ Antone, avoided arbitration, $830,000. Good deal. Big one here. Jake Fraley avoided arbitration. They signed him for $2.15 million. Lucas Sims is at $2.85 million. Avoided arbitration with him. Here's the one I love the most, Jeff. They avoided arbitration with catcher Tyler Stevenson. He got $2.525 million this year, and there is a club option that they can exercise for next year to avoid this process again. They don't even have to figure it out or talk about it. They can just call Tyler up and be like, hey, great year in 24. We knew you could do it. We picked up that option. I love that scenario so that Tyler doesn't have to worry about it either. And then, of course, we mentioned the left-hander Alex Young. They went ahead and avoided arbitration with him as well. He signed a $1.16 million contract. Those are all locked down and signed and ready to go. I like this, Jeff. I really, we talked about the depth of that bullpen. Having both Antone and Young on this list, it really creates a great scenario for Derek Johnson. It creates a great scenario for the organization as a whole. And it makes Nick Krall look really, really good, having taken a bullpen that went from overuse and lack of depth to now having 3 bona fide major league arms that you can kind of stash at AAA and just have on standby in case someone's extra tired and needs, a quick IL visit, or forbid an injury occurs and you need a replacement. They've got it built in already, and I love it.
And there was something else too that I kind of gleaned from the players who avoided arbitration with their deals. Lucas Sims signing to avoid arbitration. After his amazing 2021 season, he went to arbitration with the Reds and he still lost. Relief pitchers just have a very bad track record, unless they're a closer, of winning arbitration cases. So he just wanted to avoid all of that. And I found it interesting that he avoided it and Jonathan India chose it. Now, it's not to say, and there's no judgment call here. I mean, the report was Jonathan India wanted $4 million. The team offered $3.2 million. They couldn't quite come to a compromise. So those are the figures for arbitration. And again, to remind everybody, the arbitration process is the arbitrator picks one of those numbers. He does not find a middle ground. It's win or lose. And I think that's why a lot of players have negative experiences with arbitration, and they hear about it because teams bring out metrics. Like people complain in the comment section about how we use analytics sometimes. The teams make up their own stuff for arbitration. They have stats we've never heard of.
Who was the dude from Tampa Bay that was like,
oh, it was
what was that guy's name? The Tampa Bay Rays. Maybe
No.
Tampa Bay Rays brought out all kinds of new statistics in their arbitration hearing. The player, I can't remember his name, but he was like basically saying his head was spinning by the time it was over because the Rays made him look terrible. They managed to just make him look really bad.
There was that, and then Corbin Burns was super pissed off after his arbitration with Milwaukee because they were using different stats and things like the one thing that I kept seeing, and you still can't find it because I went to look it up, but like meltdowns and stuff like that. That's not something that I see a lot of reporting on, but apparently that's a big one, especially for relief pitchers in arbitration. But I say all that to say this: there's no like reading into Jonathan India going to arbitration. I find it a little bit interesting, but I kind of wonder a little bit because over the last few years, he's learned about the business side of baseball with all the trade rumors. He's learned about the business side of baseball with seeing Nick Castellanos let go through free agency, seeing Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez, all these guys being traded. Like he's learned about the business side of baseball. He's going to learn about the really dirty business side of baseball is the arbitration process. And to think that this is where we are in the year 2024, where, I mean, this is the best that the player owner relationship where it comes to the reserve clause has ever been, whereas it used to just be owners just kept players as long as they wanted. And it's still only here in this sort of barbaric process that arbitration really is, where they just I picture this. I've never seen an arbitration case, so I don't know this to be a fact, but I just picture that on one side of the room you got India shouting at the arbitrator how good he is, and on the other side of the room you got the Reds shouting how bad he is, and it just seems so counterproductive to me.
You know, I think you're right about that. There's not a lot to read into this, that it's just, you know, it's the business and then the worst of the business side of baseball, really. Mm-hmm. But there is a little piece of this that concerns me a little bit. And it's that I feel like the relationship between the Reds and India was already fractured a little bit with all of the trade talk and all of the speculation for India going all the way back into last season. There's no way that this process is going to improve that relationship. It's not going to make it better. It's going to be a little bit worse. And I hope that that does not negatively impact his performance, because I think the Reds are now kind of all in more on the version of having him around at least for the first half of the season, especially with how the outfield situation is playing out right now and the moves that the Reds have made. So I don't anticipate that between now and spring training, India gets traded. And I don't really want India to go into this season with a more damaged relationship. So I hope that the Reds don't go hard on tearing him down. I hope that they maintain this relationship a little bit, because we need India to be productive. So that's my only concern with him going into the arbitration process.
But I did like to see that so many guys avoided arbitration and the Reds maintained a very healthy depth with their roster.
No, absolutely. And I think what we'll do, Jeff, we've reached my favorite point in the Aloha Live shows, and that is the questions and the comments. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back from that, we put you in the driver's seat. We're taking your questions, we're taking your comments, and we're going to be talking about what you want to talk about. That is next. But before we do that, I do want to shout out the sponsor of today's podcast. Today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is over and the playoffs are afoot. You can still get in on that action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets back, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's right. One $5 bet, win or lose, gets you $150 back in bonus bets. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action right now. They've got the point spreads. They've got the money lines. They've got player props. You can even combine those prop bets on single game parlays for even more fun. If you want to get in on picking the Reds to win the division, I think they are going to. You got some sweet odds over at FanDuel right now. The Reds are still plus 450. That needle's going to start moving, I think. as the Cubs continue to not do anything, as the odds makers figure out that St. Louis is average aged 172 years old and not very good, the odds makers are going to get in on this and move the Reds up. So now is a great time to head over to FanDuel and throw a little money towards the Reds winning the division in 2024. If you want to do that, all you got to do is head over to fanduel.com/locked-on, and you can start turning your sports knowledge into cash. FanDuel is the official partner of the National Football League and the official sportsbook of Locked On. You can follow us in between episodes on the social medias. Jeff says we're X-Men now. Okay. You can follow me over there at S. Offenbaker. That's with 2 Fs. You can follow Jeff at Jeff Carr. That's Jeff with 3 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. Also, join the Discord community. Great folks over there talking Reds baseball all week long. We got a Reds channel. We got a Bengals channel. We got Off Topic. We got all kinds of things. Come join us. The link is down in today's show description. And if you haven't done so yet, go quickly bookmark after the show the site InsideTheReds.com. That is us talking about the Reds in written form. Jeff's kind of the main content producer over there, along with James Rapine. Ricky Chino's weighing in, Audie Elmore's weighing in, I'm weighing in, lots of written Reds coverage, and it's brought to you by the folks over at Sports Illustrated. So get over there today and check out what we are writing. We appreciate it. All right, Jeff, it's time. Questions and comments. The comment section has been blowing up. I don't know if you've been watching this, but it is just going today.
Appreciate everybody for being a part and being active in the comments section. And I want to start first because I actually solicited our Discord group. We shouted out the Locked On Reds Discord group. Make sure you join it in the comments or in the description of today's episode down below. There's a link. But I solicited a question there, and Niall Patterson asked, so is Nick Krall really done? I mean, he made the move, so is he really done? And if he's not done, what do you think comes next? And I appreciate that question from Niall, and I wanted to shout that out first because I do find it interesting. I think Nick Krall really vibes with the Braves general manager, Alex Anthopoulos. And the Braves are fantastic at keeping everything under wraps until it actually happens. And that if there's any rumors that surround the Braves doing anything, that thing is not going to happen. That's just somebody trying to include them in the rumors. And we have noted that really all of the moves that the Reds have made this offseason haven't been like heavily rumored before they went down. In fact, I remember that there was a rumor for a half second that the Reds were one of the favorites to sign Eduardo Rodriguez before he went to the Diamondbacks. And then after he signed with the Diamondbacks, somebody walked back the fact that the Reds were even involved at all. I really feel like Nick Krall did the whole we're done with big moves thing because, number one, they're probably not going to trade for like a Shane Bieber or Dylan Cease at this point. In fact, I kind of don't want them to right now. And then, number two, the moves that he can make, he wants to do it under cover of night, as it were. And I think that if he's not done, I think what's coming up next is he's going to get an outfielder in some form or fashion. It's not going to be anybody that wows us. I mean, obviously, Teoscar Hernandez is off the board, but it's going to be somebody that fits this roster very well, and I look forward to seeing who it is. But I think he does have that one more move in him.
I think there's a potential there for you to be right, but the right situation is going to have to present itself. I think at this point, Nick Krall would be happy to take the team as he's constructed it into spring training and be done.
Yeah.
But it's again, we're back to this right-handed outfielder bat. And by the way, I think we should talk about grades. Once again, another move has been made. I am solidly in the B to B plus range now because the only thing they didn't do that I wanted them to do was address the right-handed outfield power bat. And I can't in good conscience give him a grade now any lower than BB plus because I think this bullpen is overhauled. The starting rotation has nice solid depth. I like what they've done there. Adding Candelario helps create possibilities. So it's a BB plus for me. But to your point, is there a move? There's a move here. And I just finished saying thanks for doing this without writing it down so that I can backtrack a little bit. I just said I didn't think they would trade Jonathan India between now and spring training, but that might be your move. If the right situation presents itself to go get a right-handed bat and to create a roster spot for that right-handed bat, I think India would have to be involved in that move somehow.
Rumor has it the Mariners still want a middle infielder. Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So so that's where I land. I think that at the end of the day, it is a possibility. I don't think that it's a probability. I don't think that it's gonna happen, but I think that it could happen if the stars align, if the right kind of scenario presents itself.
I think it'll be, I mean, if it's a move, it's going to be a mid move. It's not going to be,
Sure.
We're not going to be jumping for joy. We'll be probably
No press conference, right? No press conference.
No press conference. Probably not an emergency episode. Like, I didn't even really consider an emergency.
No, we're doing an emergency episode. What are you talking about?
Michael A. Taylor's your Cincinnati Reds backup outfielder.
Listen, after the way we struggled last week, I'm doing an emergency episode. All right, let's move into this comment section again. Jeff, as I mentioned, has been blowing up the entire episode. I appreciate you guys. I will try to circle back to a lot of them, but that's just a lot of scrolling. So I'm just going to jump in here because it's what I see on the screen. And I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking about Indian arbitration. Jeff in 812 says he thinks that the arbitration situation is more about Boris than India being gung-ho for $4 million. Boris is likely pushing the rookie of the year chip. Okay, maybe. We know how Boris is going to Boris, I guess. Yeah. That's the answer to that. And I don't know. I think that if it were me, I would not push this arbitration process because it's highly likely that Jonathan India is not with this team all the way through 2024. Definitely not with this team in 2025. So, they probably should be more focused on making him look like a model citizen to find better matches later.
Maybe. Actually, I take the opposite road on that. I think this is Scott Boras saying that the situation is untenable, that their relationship is untenable, and he's just going to extract every penny that he possibly can out of it before he is traded, because then, the higher baseline from this year means that his second year of arbitration will be a bigger jump, assuming he continues to produce and play pretty well. So I think that this is Scott Boras kind of playing the long game a little bit, because I think he understands what you say. He probably agrees with you that Jonathan India is not much longer going to be a Cincinnati Red, and he's trying to play the long game by setting his dude up with a higher floor of a salary right now.
All right, let's go to this because we haven't talked about this at all. And surprise, Jeff, you got me surprised because we didn't write things down. I'm going to have you talk about this mostly because you're there and I'm here. Scott's asking about, and shout out to Scott. Hey, Scott, we appreciate your dedication. I know you're here like every single week and we see you everywhere we go. So we really, really appreciate you. He says, why are the player appearances at the Caravan so lackluster, especially the north leg of the Caravan? I'm going to be honest. I don't ever pay a lot of attention to the Caravan because it never, ever stops here in Kona. I have yet to see a Reds Caravan stop in Kona, and I ask for it every year and they ignore me. So I don't pay a lot of attention to this, Jeff. Have you paid attention to the Caravan at all? Are you up on this?
I have, but now I'm looking up the rosters again, because to be honest with you, I remember thinking that the north leg was actually the one that was most stacked. I think that I do remember seeing that Andrew Abbott is on the north Caravan. But I remember looking at the one that's close to me because they're coming to Hamilton, and I saw, John Sadek's going to be there. There's going to be a couple of television broadcasters and some prospects, but I think the interesting thing is that Ian Jabot is going to be there. And after our episode a couple of days ago, me saying that I think he might be the odd man out, he's probably going to be really happy to see me. So I think that could be interesting. And then I've also had a buddy saying that we need to see if we can get him to take a picture with me and say cushion for the pushing. But when it comes to the north leg, I thought I liked that roster a little bit more. So I'm trying to find it real quick and pull that up.
Well, we can circle back to that if you do find it, because I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, I got it pulled up here. All right, so okay. North Tour. Oh, North Tour, they got Frankie Montes. Okay, I was wrong. Andrew Abbott's on the East Tour. North Tour is David Bell, Frankie Montes, Rat Lauder, Ty Floyd. Tommy Thrall's going to be there. Corky Miller, Sam LeCure. That's a pretty solid one. I will say I noticed a lack of the core. Like there's not, Matt McLean's not on any of these. You don't see Elliott on any of these. You don't see CES, anybody like that. I was a little bit bummed for that reason, but I kind of get it. Some of them probably have already gone out to Arizona and they're not trying to come back here or something like that. They're working, and to be honest with you, I'd rather them work than say hi to me, because I want to see them win ball games more than I want them to say hi to me. So I think at the end of the day, that's probably the explanation behind it. And I don't put a lot of like consternation behind my evaluation for the Reds caravan roster.
All right, let's do this, Jeff. For the audio only folks, that is going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Video folks, stick around. We're keeping on with your questions and comments right after we wrap this up. For you audio folks, join us over on YouTube for the Aloha Fridays live. We talk about it throughout the week. Make sure you're subscribed over there. Click the notification bell so that you don't miss out on it. We love talking Reds baseball with you. The rest of this Q&A will come into your audio feed as a bonus episode a little bit later today. Until we talk to you again next week, we'll circle up more information and bring it back here and keep you locked on Reds every single day. All right, video folks here live on YouTube, we appreciate you. Listen, there's tons of you on right now. I love it. Could y'all do me a favor? Everybody look down at the bottom of the screen. There is a thumbs up like button on this episode. Everybody mash that button today. Let's see if we can get the thumbs up like button for this episode to match the total people that are watching. Just click it. And if you haven't clicked subscribe and notification while you're down there clicking, click those too. We love having you all around. Appreciate it so very much. All right, Jeff, let's get back into this because there's lots of talk over here and there's lots of things that are going to be fun to get to. The scrolling way back is probably not going to happen. If you posted something before this that you really wanted to talk about, post it again. Put it back in the comments so that I don't have to go scream searching for it. But Carrick Melvin checked in during the Nick Krall conversation and said this about Nick Krall being done. Carrick says that Nick Krall never said he was done. He said he was done with big moves, could still add a platoon bat. First of all, I think this Brent Suter move is a big move. I don't think that that's the minor adjustment to the bullpen that he said he was going to make. This is a bigger type of move for me. I really like this signing. But to your point, Carrick, he did leave wiggle room when he said he was done. He said he was done with major moves, done with big signings. Yeah, you're right. And to your point about the platoon bat, I think that's where we landed too. But you're right, Carrick. He left himself an out, so it wasn't him saying one thing and doing another. He just may have Jedi mind tricked Jeff a little bit. Look, hey, did I do that right? Did I do the Star Wars reference right? Was that?
Yeah, you got there. Yeah.
All right, I got it. How about that? There's one comment here. I just wanted to touch base on this one too. Username, if my clicker will work. Sell the team Bob says, I hope we get to see Ricky again this year. Sadly, he is in another organization now. He's gone. Where did he sign? Was it? Do you recall?
I think it's with the Royals. No, it's not with the Royals.
I know that's what I was going to say, Kansas City too, but I don't know. He's gone. I don't see him back. That is a moment in time that we're never going to recapture.
Well, because he was in the minor leagues and he accepted free agency. He elected free agency over staying in the organization. Let me see here. Ricky Karcher, where'd he go?
Diamondbacks is what the comment section is telling me.
Diamondbacks. Yeah, I mean, hey, if he's got a shot there, he's got a shot there. That was a guy that, it's always going to be a fun story, but that was a guy that's a fun story. And I don't think that the Reds were really counting on much more from that.
This is a good question from Doug. He says to contrast our take on the Reds offseason versus the rest of the division. And we've made fun of the Cubs a little bit. We haven't talked about Milwaukee really at all for good reason. And then there's the stinking St. Louis Cardinals. So let's play with this a little bit, Jeff. The Cardinals did go out and make some moves. I just don't know that their moves equate to them being favored in this division like the odds makers are favoring them in this division. I think they're being overhyped. I think that they have allocated some resources in questionable ways for players that, I just don't think are, on the upswing of their careers. I think taking all that into account, I don't rate them as the favorite to win this division. I think Milwaukee, Jeff, is a team in peril. I think they are a team that has not set a course. They look to be a team that's primed for an explosion, and I mean blowing it up. and just getting rid of the rest of the guys that are still around and starting from scratch. That could seemingly make sense there in Milwaukee. The Cubs, who positioned themselves to be the mover and the shakers, to be the team that went out and played Los Angeles Dodgers, New York Mets light and really just loaded up to make a run for it. And they didn't really do very much until this week.
No, and that's something that I discussed a lot with our Locked On MLB host Sully on a crossover from yesterday, is that looking at the rest of this division, I think the Reds are definitely the favorites, especially with the moves that they've made. I mean, the Pirates continue to pirate. Like, I still don't know exactly what they're going to do if they ever care about contending, because it kind of felt like they were close-ish to where the Reds were ending last season. Obviously not win-loss wise, but just the feeling of their future and that the fact that they were close to being a top team in this division. You're right about Milwaukee. I low-key think, and I think that they're not going to make any trades before the season, but they're going to wait and see how what they have right now works out. And if it doesn't work out, if they're getting into May and they're not quite there, if they're getting into June and all that stuff, they're going to blow it up. And I still feel like that the Brewers are ready to take a step back. The Cubs, they've got a few more moves in them, but what are those moves at this point? Like, they could bring back Cody Bellinger, but they had him last year. And I mean, while that helped, it didn't take him to the playoffs. Shota Imanaga is a solid signing, but he's not an ace. He's not a guy that's better than, I mean, he and Marcus Stroman are probably on the same level. So really, you just replaced Marcus Stroman, who is now a New York Yankee. At the end of the day, I thought that the moves that the Cardinals made were just to bring them back to the middle of the division. Sonny Gray is probably the singular most talented signing that the NL Central has had, but they also coupled that with trading away Tyler O'Neill. He's in Boston now, and they've got two starting pitchers. One led the league in hits allowed. The other led the league in homers allowed. So what are you really gaining there? I don't buy the resurgence of the Cardinals, and I absolutely buy the fact that the Reds will win this division. I mean, unless the Cubs just go out and sign everybody else remaining on the free agent roster, which I don't see happening.
I think from a standpoint of looking at the Cardinals starting rotation, I think it is improved. I mean, you're right about Sonny Gray, but overall, even with the other additions, I think it's better. I mean, first of all, just the fact that they're not running Adam Wainwright out there, and the end of Adam Wainwright was like Weekend at Bernie's. I think that somebody was just holding his corpse up and helping him throw the baseball. It was terrible. So that's an upgrade. But for me, I know, Jeff, I know it's easy for people to be like, your guys are just homers. You're just biased. But I really feel like the Reds are truly, honestly, the best positioned team in the National League Central to make a push and win this division. I really do. I think the moves that Nick Krall has made have solidified my thoughts around that this team should really be on opening day favored to win the division. And the odds makers clearly don't agree with me right now, but I really feel like I'm landing there honestly, and I'm not putting Cincinnati colored glasses on and just making that prediction. I feel like that's true. And I know I did not mention the Pittsburgh Pirates at all. And shout out to Ethan, bless your heart. I know you think they're going to win something. I'll talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates when the Pittsburgh Pirates try a little harder, and we'll see. They're going to be fun. The Pirates are going to be fun. O'Neal Cruz is going to be back. There's some fun players to watch over there, but I don't think Pittsburgh's in the mix quite yet.
They will always have April of last year, where they finished April in first place in the division. Think about that. They were at one time first place in the division last year.
Oh, I remember, because Ethan Smith could not contain himself.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ethan over at Locked On Pirates. Let's get to this from Grant, because there was some Joey Votto news this week, and Joey Votto, in my heart and mind, is always going to be a Red, so we're going to talk about him here. So Grant asks this. He says, humor me as I vent. Why can't we pull up to Joey Votto, say, get in the car, loser, we're going to the World Series, give him $3 million, rescue him from free agency purgatory, and kick Jose Barrero off the bench? Grant goes on to say, I know Barrero plays outfield and has more utility. I know there isn't a spot for Joey on the field. I just hate the thought of him watching the Reds win the World Series from the sidelines the year after he leaves. Grant, you are reading my mind as a fan. as my love of the Reds, my appreciation for all that Joseph Daniel Votto has brought to this team, I am with you. Yes. But then the baseball mind takes over, and I just don't. I mean, first of all, Joey would have to agree to be the Jose Barrero of this team. Joey has said all along he thinks he still has baseball left in him and wants to be a starter. That being said, now that is news that 3 teams are expressing interest in Joey Votto, I think it's less and less and less likely that some desperation moment will arise where Joey says, I'll be Jose Barrero.
Well, and remember, it's 4 teams. It's not 3, because he clarified that there's 4 teams.
Okay. So there you go. That being said, Jeff, in my heart, I would love this. In my mind, I'm like, Joey's not going to agree to this. The Reds are not going to want to do this. I think at the end of the day, that could be more of a distraction, just with talking heads making trouble. And why isn't Joey playing? I bet he's mad. I bet he's bitter against CES. Joey Votto hates CES. You know, that's the kind of stuff that would come out. So I just don't see this as viable. I would love it. I don't see it as viable.
And I'm with you. I would love to see it from a heart standpoint, but the mind is telling me, like, okay, let's do an exercise. He's on this roster. What is the over under? Okay, I'm going to set it. Joey Votto's on the roster. Over under 10.5 at bats a week. What do you think?
It'd be under.
It'd be under.
I think it'd be under. Maybe one day at DH and then a couple pinch hits. I think that's really all he would be. Yeah.
He's not signing up for that. And that's the thing. Like, I believe, and there's probably a reason that he is still, I mean, there's a couple of different reasons he's still unsigned, but I think the biggest is because he still sees himself as a difference maker, a guy who can be someone for a team. He does not have that ability to be a difference maker here anymore. Otherwise, the Reds would have picked up his option. I believe that. I believe that they would have paid the $20 million to keep him here. But when it comes to what the Reds have and what he can offer at this point in his career, 40-year-old Joey Votto, not 30-year-old Joey Votto, not 35-year-old Joey Votto, 40-year-old Joey Votto just cannot provide this team with what they will get out of 25 other players on the roster. I don't know about Jose Barrero, but honestly, Jose Barrero plays totally different positions than Joey Votto. Like, Jose Barrero, if he's the 26th man on the roster, can fill a shortstop or a center field hole for a day or something like that, or a second base hole, third base, whatever. He can do that. Joey Votto plays first base and DH, and that's it. So the mind part of this, it just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. And look, this happens in baseball all the time. And I remember, and I forget who it was that commented, but I remember they're like, the Reds had to move on from Tony Perez. They had to move on from Joe Morgan. They had to move on from Pete Rose. They had to move on from everybody. That's how baseball goes. Our favorite players at some point get too old to be the productive player that they were the rest of their career, and the Reds have to find someone else who's better. And I firmly believe that this year, if you compare what CES does, if you compare what Jeimer Candelario does, I think they're probably more productive players than Joey Votto in 2024. All
right, let's move to this for just a second, Jeff. And I know this is kind of directed at me. Doug's asking, can I try and interview Suter? Says my interviews are great. Thanks for that, Doug. I love doing the lefty in the bullpen. Jeff will tell you that, you know, I get so jazzed about doing those things. And then even our joint interviews on the main channel here, guys, we have had good fortune in getting players from the Reds and being able to talk to them. Little inside baseball for you all. It is hard to get active roster players. It's just hard. Jeff and I have done a ton of legwork to get the ones that we have been able to get on the show. That being said, I'll try, Doug. I will put an official request into the team. That'll be my only way to get at him right now. I'll try. And if they say yes, then we'll have him on. But because you're asking for it, Doug, for you, I will submit a request and we'll see what happens.
Local guy would have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that'd be at least a two-parter, I think. So I'll try. Worst they can tell me is no. I'll try and see what I can do. You guys have made this show so popular. You have made this show so known. We run into you guys time and time again. I think that because there's so many of you, maybe we stand a little bit of a chance. So I will give it a shot. All right, let's move into a few more. Have you seen anything you want to dig into, Jeff, real quick while I read for a minute?
Not necessarily.
Oh, there was one I did one. Let me see if I can find it again. I'm not going to go back and find it, but let's talk about it. Sorry for whoever asked it. I tried to save it and missed it. There was a question about Ellie De La Cruz's middle infield defense. And do we think he will be an improved fielder 2024 versus 2023? I'm a little concerned that he won't be. And I know that might surprise you, Jeff. I don't know that Ellie's going to focus on the defense. I think Ellie's defense might just be whatever it is. And I would think at this point, I'd rather him work on figuring things out offensively than worrying too much about defense. I know there were times he made some big errors at shortstop. I ultimately don't think he's going to end up being a shortstop. So I'd rather him focus on the offense and then prepare for his move to third base or wherever the heck it is that he goes when he finishes filling out and can't range anymore.
I think honestly, you can explain a lot of his defensive errors and things like that he had last year, just lack of focus. I think that's something he gains as he gains more major league playing time. I think he'll be fine. I think I'm with you. I think eventually he moves off of shortstop, but I don't see his defense as detrimental. I think he's fine.
All right, let's see who else has something to say. Sorry, guys. It is hard for me to talk and read today. I usually do this a little bit better. Jeff, help me.
Yeah, let's do this one. Branch has a question. Better chance of being on the opening day roster, Barrero or India?
Ooh.
And I think it's India, but I don't see the trade materializing because the trade right now is still just minor leaguers. That's all that Nick Krall's heard about. So I don't think that he's looking for that. He's looking to improve the major league roster right now. So I think he is on the opening day roster. Barrero, at the end of the day, it's just, do the Reds want to expose him to waivers or not? I don't think that you can make an argument that he's going to be crazy productive as the 26th man, but I just don't think that India's getting traded before the season starts either.
Here's a fun one from our buddy Tim Daniel. Tim, how are you, my man? Tim does Late Night Reds. If you've not listened to his show, go listen to his show. Jeff's been on it. I've been on it. Tim is my Jeff Carr fill-in, both because he's very knowledgeable about the Reds and fun to talk to. And if you're not paying close attention, you'll think it's still Jeff sitting there. Added bonus. So that is the doppelganger question. Is Tim Daniel your favorite doppelganger, Jeff, or is it Senator Ted Cruz?
Well, I've heard that, certain pictures of Graham Ashcraft look like me. And then also there were some pictures of Yonder Alonso back in the day that looked like me as well. Although that was when I had less facial hair. But yeah, I guess Tim's my favorite.
And then circling back to Branch's India or Barrero, I think India is the answer to that, because if there is a big move that doesn't involve so let's, me, cover my bases. If the big move for a right-handed platoon does not include an India trade, Barrero would be the one I would sacrifice. And I think both playing time wise and just where he ranks in the pecking order in the 26-man roster, Barrero would be the odd man out. If they do work a trade for India for the platoon, well, then Barrero, I think, solidifies his place on the roster heading into opening day. So that's kind of my non-answer answer. It's very, that felt very like campaign trail. I think I answered for both there. I'm not sure.
And kind of along the Barrero lines, and then looping back in the Votto conversation, Carrick has an interesting point. If Barrero doesn't see the field for a week, no one would care. If Votto doesn't, it would be a problem. If Barrero was cut later, no one cares. If Votto is cut, how would that go?
Oh,
that's the thing.
That would be the worst end to the story that you could possibly have.
Because that's the other part of this is like, I mean, and maybe it's just a, Kurt Casale Phantom IL stint for the rest of the year, but it's like, how do we want this story to end? I feel like as it stands, this is probably the best scenario, as much as we fans would have loved to have like a Joey Votto week or a Joey Votto year or whatever that would have turned into. I think this is kind of it. This is where we are.
Ted Cruz. Sorry. For those of you that don't know, what was that? You were on Mo's show, right? You were producing for Mo?
I still don't see
Mo said that. Yeah. Mo's the one that said that. There's where'd it go? I got to do better on my scrolls. Sorry, guys. Here it is. Mike Graham says he sees Connor Phillips as a future ninth inning guy as opposed to a starting pitcher. Our thoughts on that. I think that's too soon to make that call. I think that Connor Phillips has shown tremendous potential as a starting pitcher. Anything can happen, though. That being said, I don't think the Reds are ready at this point with what they've seen, with what Phillips has done, with what his upside has shown to make him a relief pitcher. That being said, being able to pitch the ninth, focus on a couple pitches and just go out and throw with maximum effort, he'd be kind of nasty in the back end of a bullpen.
He's got great stuff for sure. I think that there's still time for him to figure out the starting pitching thing. He's only thrown, 5 starts last year. So I think there's plenty of time for him to figure some things out. He'll start the year in AAA. We'll see him at different points during the season, I'm sure. Whether it's just giving other guys rest or if there's an injury, or if there's a doubleheader or something. There's 2 guys really that you can look at and say they're going to anchor Louisville's rotation and be the perfect, last second call ups to fill in for starters. And that's Brandon Williamson and Connor Phillips. Just speaks to the depth of this roster that they can do that.
Jeff in 812 says India will be Krall's trade deadline piece. I kind of agree with this. I think if India makes it to opening day, India makes it to the trade deadline. I think that's how the situation will go. The only thing that can move me off of that, if that there's some big new need that arises and Nick Krall has to scramble to fill it. But as we've said, he's done a good job of creating depth. So I don't know that exact situation will present itself. So I think that I agree with this, that if he's here opening day, he becomes the trade deadline piece for an upgrade, for a push for the playoffs.
Nick Krall, and I think this is just another point to why he's not making a trade this offseason. He's got so much ammunition for a deadline move to bring in that piece that just brings it all together. The rug that really ties the room together. He's going to be able to go out and get that rug because he's got a lot of different options with which to choose from. And India may or may not be the most valuable piece to trade there. I mean, you might be talking about some other different players there, and one of them, I don't necessarily know that they're looking to trade him because he is so close. And I kind of want to throw this up here. There was somebody that asked, and I was trying to find it, and I apologize.
While you're looking for it, Doug checks in and says that you look like Fidel Castro. I love that. A young Fidel, though, Jeff. Young. I mean, you don't have quite as much gray as Fidel was. So
can't even.
Maybe Bay of Pigs. Bay of Pigs. Fidel Castro. You got that. Although he might have been in. He might have been in better shape than you're in. I bet you that Fidel Castro never fell off a rowing machine. I'm just saying.
They didn't have rowing machines. They had rowing boats. Nobody knew who he was.
Debbie's asking about Kurt Casale, and I know the Reds did a lot this offseason, so it was probably easy to miss Debbie. Kurt Casale, they bought him out. He's gone. He is no longer a member of the organization. I would love if he's done playing baseball. I haven't seen if he's signed somewhere else or not. I don't think that he has. If he's not going to be a player in 2024, I would love to see them put him on the coaching staff, maybe a roving catching instructor. A lot of knowledge there. He was really good with handling young pitchers. I think he could be a benefit in the Reds organization. Would love to see it. Did you find what you were looking for there, Jeff?
I didn't, but I remember the question. The question is one that we've answered before, but I have a new kind of feeling, not a new answer, but a new feeling to it. And that is, will Rhett Lauder make the major leagues this year? And we've said before, we think that it's going to be a little bit later on in the season, but I find it interesting because if you look, and this brings up an article that I wanted to talk about a little bit as well. If you look at some of the national coverage of what the Reds have done this offseason, every time they talk about how good the Reds pitching staff looks, they include Rhett Lauder. And they say and they got Rhett Lauder waiting in the wings and things like that. They actually include him more than they include Connor Phillips. And I find that intriguing to me because we don't necessarily think that way. And I still don't think we see him early in the season. But it's fascinating to me that so many people hold him in high regard. Makes me think that him being involved in any of the trade rumors that we heard means that Nick Krall just shut down whenever he heard that. And he was just like, yeah, no, we're not talking Rhett Lauder.
Yeah, first off, I completely agree with that. I think Nick Krall probably laughed at some general managers when they made their pitches with what was leaked anyway. I think Nick Krall was just probably like, you guys are smoking something over there. We're not doing that. Specifically to Rhett Lauder. If everything goes correctly And if everything goes the way I want to see it go, and you want to see it go, and you want to see it go, we're not going to need Rhett Lauder in 2024.
Right.
Given how his season ended last year and the fact that they didn't fire him up at the major league level, or I'm sorry, not the major league level, professionally. They didn't fire him up after they drafted him. Wanted to rest that arm, a little bit of arm issues. I would be all for bringing him along slowly in 2024. Let's limit his innings. Let's tell him outright from opening day. Listen, Rhett, we think you are going to be a tremendous asset to the Reds. We think you're going to be a great major leaguer, but we are not going to bring you up this year. I don't care if you have a 0.00 ERA in whatever number of innings you pitch. You're not coming up. Shut down that expectation. I want him to focus on working on his stuff. I want him to focus on getting his mechanics right. I want him to focus on making sure his arm is 100%. I want him to take his time, and I want him to be ready to kick the door down in 2025. I think that's the best, highest usage of Rhett Lauder. Hold him back just a little bit this year to bring him forward in 2025.
I think, and I definitely agree with that. Where do you rank him talent-wise on the depth chart? Because I definitely would rank him ahead of like Carson Spires, Lyon Richardson, and stuff like that. But I don't think it's much higher than that.
No, all things being equal, if there weren't these arm issues, if I wasn't concerned because it's his first year of professional baseball, if I was throwing out all those concerns, he would be the next man up from the minor leagues in my mind, just based on how far along he is. But he's this much ahead of where I would say Connor Phillips or the rest of the guys that have major league experience now. So I don't think you lose a lot by holding him back and making sure that you don't have some short-term success and create long-term problems for yourself. So I think that's why I'd be willing to hold him back.
This is not going to happen because we know what spring training does to pitchers, and some guys start the season late. Not everybody's going to end spring training 100% healthy, but if they're 100% healthy, we know the starting five in Cincinnati, and we know the starting five in Louisville. Like the starting five in Louisville is going to be Williamson, Phillips, Lauder, Richardson, and Spires. And then you've got your starting five in Cincinnati that's all set. I mean, and on top of that, you still have Nick Martinez that's going to be in the bullpen that can be a starting pitcher. There's just so much depth, and I absolutely love that.
This from Mr. E. Who catches more this year? Tyler Stevenson. Hands down. Listen, I think bringing back Luke Maile, we've talked about this, Jeff. Tremendous signing for a lot of reasons. One, he's probably one of the better backup catchers in Major League Baseball. Again, backup catcher. Two, he's not starting over with all these rookie pitchers. They don't have to start over with a new catcher. The knowledge that he brings back, the ability to work with those guys, tremendous for the Reds. Love the signing, but that signing was not like a push Tyler Stevenson signing. That signing was to have a really good backup catcher that the pitchers knew. Tyler Stevenson all the way.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt that Tyler Stevenson will catch the most and get more playing time than Luke Maile will. But Luke Maile's playing time is going to be valuable. That's not to say it won't be. It's just I think Tyler Stevenson is going to bounce back in a big way this year. I think people just don't. They saw what he did last year and they think that's who he is. That's not who he is. He was dealing with, healing in the collarbone area and trying to get his swing back, trying to figure out what that looks like now. And he was dealing with the fact that for the first couple of months of the season, they decided that first base was supposed to be part of his plan too. And I just think that as much as we supported the idea at the time, we were totally wrong about that. And it's not the only thing we've ever been wrong about, that's for sure. But I think that it messed with his plate appearances. And I think that we will see a much better hitter this season from Tyler Stevenson.
Jeff, you read and take this one from Carrick.
I mean, I like this, and obviously we're going to talk about this on our next episode. I wanted to spend more time on the spring training invites because Julian Aguiar was actually one of the more surprising ones to see. He was a great young pitcher for the Reds, and I don't think that he's anywhere on the depth chart as far as maybe he's better than Carson Spires, but I don't think he's better than Lyon Richardson or anything like that. But I do feel excited to see what he has for the Reds. I don't know that we'll see him pitch a lot in spring training. I think this is more of a, hey, look, we really value the development that you've shown so far. This is kind of a, let's get you your first taste of Major League spring training camp but I also feel like he is an exciting addition to that list. I don't put him on the top 10. That's amazing to say, or top 11 really starting pitchers for the Cincinnati Reds, because there is 11 pitchers that we can really trust to at least start one game. I don't know about, Richardson or Spires, or like calling on them to start an extended period of time, but in a pinch, the Reds have 11 guys that they can call on.
All right, gang, we have crossed the 1 hour mark here on the Aloha Friday live edition of Locked On Reds. If you've got something burning that you want to ask, get it in there now. We'll do a couple more, and then we're going to get out of here for the week. I want to say once again, thank you guys so much for spending a Friday afternoon with us. The numbers have been tremendous this offseason. I love how engaged and excited Reds fans have been this offseason. It has been just a refreshing, tremendous change. I know how much better I feel this offseason than after the last offseason. I know how much better Jeff feels. I see how much better you guys feel. Really appreciate you all being here for this and spending time talking with us. It's a lot of fun. Love talking Reds baseball. So really appreciate you guys. There's some Alejo Lopez conversation going on. Alejo Lopez. How the hell did you guys end up on Alejo Lopez?
Man, we're deep into that.
All right.
He's a Brave now.
Listen, I liked Alejo Lopez, and, I understand he was not a masher, but he just went out there and was a grinder every day and didn't complain and did whatever he was asked to do. And I liked that dude. I was really pulling for him. But yeah, I think that our talent level here in Cincinnati has surpassed having the Alejo Lopez's of the world hanging around the roster.
Yeah, and that was something I talked about from a pitching standpoint when we were doing when I did the spring training countdown the other day and looking at the number 78 and Alan Busenitz, who is still in the organization, but he's not on the 40-man roster. It's just goes to show you guys like Alejo Lopez, guys like Busenitz, and all the different players that we saw last year just cycle through in some way, shape, or form. The Reds have gone beyond the whole, like, let's just throw together 26 players and see what we get out of them. They've got a very solid roster now that you can say is the 26 man, and even the 40 man is pretty deep. And Alejo Lopez was always somebody that I'm like, I feel like I need to see a little bit more from, and I just never saw it. And the Reds never wanted to give him that opportunity. And I feel like they know more than we do when it comes to running a team. So there was a reason that they didn't give him that opportunity.
They don't know more than I do. What are you talking about? I hate it when you say things like that. That's just clearly wrong. No. Oh, here we go. We'll end with this. With our evaluations of the team, how do we see the pecking order? What does the division look like at the end of 2024, Jeff? What's the finish? I'm going to go Reds, Cardinals, Cubs, Pirates, Brewers, because I anticipate the Brewers absolutely blowing up the team.
I'm going to say Reds, Cubs, Pirates, Cardinals, Brewers.
Wow.
I don't think the Cardinals are very good.
Cardinals you think they're the fourth place team?
I just don't see it. Like, I don't see it. I don't see the talent in the lineup. I mean, they've got some talent in the rotation. They've lost a lot out of the bullpen. They still have Ryan Helsley, but who else do they have? I really think that the Cardinals did what they did to just be competitive this year, and they needed to do more if they thought they were going to win the division. They don't have, and this is the other thing too, and this is the reason that they made so many moves for the starting rotation. They called up Matthew Liberatore last year. They don't have the farm system that they used to. Remember, it used to be like they would get rid of somebody and they call somebody else up, and they'd be amazing. Or they just bring up different positional guys, and you're like, oh, they're totally amazing. They don't have that anymore. Their farm system is not where the Reds is. Their ability to field a major league team is going to be dependent on what they can add between now and spring training. And I don't believe that they are the type of team that can compete for the division this year.
All right, Jeff, let's call it a day. I'm throwing up some of the predictions coming in on the screen there. I love that nobody said the Reds wouldn't win the division. Thank you guys for that. And on that note, that's going to do it for this Aloha Friday edition of Locked On Reds. Once again, thank you guys for being here so much. This is my favorite part of the week, is getting to talk baseball with you all. This will be our last show of the week, unless there's more from Nick Krall. Nick, save it for Monday, if you don't mind. I would appreciate it so that we can fill next week. But I appreciate you listening, Nick Krall. And on that note, Jeff, get us out of here.
Thanks, everybody, for checking us out here on this live Aloha edition of the podcast. Coming up next week, the first podcast of the week, we are going to talk about those invites to spring training and what they all mean, because there's some exciting names like Julian Aguiar on that list. But until then, you can bet that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.
Fidel Castro.
Idea.